Welcome, everybody. My name is Olga Rosales Salinas, and I'm here to present San Francisco Bay Area Moms Bloom event and expert panel. Our Bloom event is here to support new and expecting moms. On today's expert panel, we have Jen and Ryan, who live in Pacifica. Our parents of 2 kids, 9 and 12, and are co-founders of Mercury Coach. They are on a mission to make 3 million parents their child's hero. Through education, coaching, and the science of the mind, they help parents break free from the negative patterns they learned as children, to slow down, connect, and live lives of freedom, joy, and meaning. Thank you, everybody, for helping me welcome Jen and Ryan to the show today.
Hi everybody. Thank you for listening.
Great to be here. Thank you for being here. So you guys are in a shared office space today, which I think is super cute.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay. Can you just start by telling me a little bit about how long you've been part of Mercury Coach, when you started it, and give me a little bit of background?
Yeah, I mean, the journey has been a lifetime to get here. I don't know when it really started, but it officially started about 3 years ago. And it's, we've been doing it since then.
Okay, so this is parenting coaching. It feels like life coaching, every stage of parenting. Am I grasping that right?
Absolutely. I mean, what we really do, I mean, both of us have had really interesting and challenging lives, especially once we became parents. And that drove us to hypnosis, hypnotherapy, neurolinguistic programming, Hawaiian energy work. We have such an amazing, diverse background of things that we've learned to help ourselves in the process. So in some ways, this all started, 12 years ago when we had our first child.
Wow.
And so we help people, we help leaders. I'm an executive in the technology industry, and so I do leadership coaching and breakthrough work with people that help them to free up the beliefs that hold them back. And we've really focused in on parents now because we recognize that parents are the first leaders, right? The impact that we can have on our kids early on is so powerful, and so we really want to bring that to the world.
It's awesome. And I want to ask you questions about like life in general, but we're focusing today on the Bloom event and new and expecting moms. And I think it's really interesting that you're talking about the executive world and how you started this business 12 years ago, and through your life, you're also raising kids. But for new and expecting moms, are at this really critical time where they're learning how to be moms, and maybe they had an idea of what kind of mom they were going to be. And now they're faced with the reality of motherhood. What kind of advice did you give moms, specifically that are tuning in for our Bloom event?
Yeah, totally. Well, the advice would be, first of all, to give yourself like a big hug and a break, because the thing that nobody really told me, and I don't think most people realize this, is that once you decide, like that moment you decide to step into becoming a parent, all of a sudden, all of the stuff from your childhood, all that unresolved trauma, all of that way of being that you were surrounded by, it resurfaces. And it resurfaces, like it can resurface for a lot of people like as soon as pregnancy or even before pregnancy. So it can start really quickly, and that it lives in a place that most people aren't talking about. I mean, we see self-help and we see a lot of like parenting books and all these things that we're doing to prepare, right? To prepare our bodies, to prepare ourselves for, our skills and what to do. But the real behavior, it lives in our unconscious minds. It lives in a place that got formed when we weren't even aware of it or capable of being aware of it. And so all behavior is irrational. So if somebody's like, you're not behaving rationally, well, like, yeah, I'm not, because neither are you. Because nobody can.
You first.
Yeah. And so like when you find that you're responding to things in ways that are different from what you think you're supposed to, or how you thought you would, or you're like, oh, this is supposed to be such a beautiful time and I'm not happy, like that feeling, it's like, cut yourself a break. It's not your fault. And, and the good news, that's kind of it's crappy news in a way. Like it sucks because it's like, what? I don't have any control over that. Except that the good news is that there are ways to change that. Like as quickly as you learn something, it can be changed.
Right. And I love this idea because I think it was my first baby. We were trying to do sleep training, and I had never understood what shaking a baby would look like. I'd never how would anybody? And I would never, but I was so tired, and no one speaks of the sleep deprivation and just being outside and being so much heavier than usually, used to. And just that desperation in the middle of the night and that raw human feeling. And I just got it. I got why you feel upside down in your own mind.
Yeah.
So I love that you guys are doing this work, and thank you so much for being here. It's such important work to just give moms the ability to give themselves grace, and hopefully the rest of society can follow along and give us grace as well.
I think what you just said is super, super important.
It is.
And this obviously we don't have a lot of time to talk about this, but the deeper part of our mind is where all of our behaviors come from. Like Jen was saying, we don't behave rationally, but our society has taught us that the rational mind is in control, and it's actually not. And so that's the whole explanation. We are doing the best we can from what's been building up since we were kids. And no matter how much you want to be a certain way, that's an aspiration, but it's not what's really inside you. And what we've discovered is how to clear out, not only map it, but clear out what's inside you, so that you can get the behaviors you want. Because getting it through trying to teach yourself things is a really slow and not very effective process. And it can be radically fast. And so give yourself grace, because what's inside is probably not even clear to you. You
don't even know until you're being woken up again after 20 minutes of sleep. You're
when we think rationally about stuff, why am I doing this? We're not right ever. It's not really why you're doing things. And so once you can find those things, you can get rid of them. And that's exciting. And then you can be different the next day, which is amazing.
Right. I feel like I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, just going back to what you shared about that moment in the middle of the night, it reminds me of literally the rock bottom moment of my own parenting. And I was tired, but I also had this crazy fear of being tired. So it was this weird, I was well, if I'm tired, if I don't get a good enough sleep, then tomorrow I might be too moody. And so instead, I totally lost it in that moment with my kids. And I felt like a monster.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's anxiety inducing, and it's, any work that you've built to become an adult and a functioning adult. I feel like all of that goes out the window in those moments, because you just can't. You can't. And, we have the baby showers, and we have the rallying around the new mom and the social circles, and you get the diapers and you get the fancy stroller. But nobody is talking about that foundation of emotionally being prepared for a baby.
You got
and
it.
you guys are doing this work. So give me some tips, maybe 3 tips that you can prepare a mom emotionally for what's about to happen to her. Mom and dad, I guess.
Well, I would say that so the 2 tips I would say, one is that you are essentially going to be reparenting yourself first. So whatever happened when you were a kid, whatever needs weren't met, whatever judgments you were suffering from, whatever was going on in your sphere is going to get reawakened, and you are going to have to confront that. And if it's not dealt with or resolved, then you're going to expect some challenges, and understand that that's what's going on. It's not that your partner is a lazy sack of whatever. It's not that your kids are defiant. These are all lenses that we look through, and we have to look back at ourselves. So whenever you have a challenge, look back. What is it that's going on in me? What am I wanting? What am I feeling? What am I expecting? And what, most importantly, can I do? Because
what's in my control?
What can I do? Yeah. And then the second thing, which it's competitively important. It's as important, which is the biggest impact you can have on your kids. It's not the school that you choose. It's not your discipline style. It's not any of that. It's your own life. How happy are you? How much are you living your own truth and who you are? Because our kids come in and they can't even make out shapes, right? They're making sense of their world, and their
Yeah.
mind is taking in and making meaning from what they're seeing, and they're taking in everything. And we hear this, and we hear, yeah, it's important to be happy, but like literally the impact of being happy or not happy is like a million times more powerful than I realized going into this. So, you know, we martyr ourselves, we sacrifice, we make all these, but when things are coming from that place, we're teaching our kids to do the same thing.
And even like taking a step deeper, like your kids, when they feel like, you can try to put on the face, right? Like we do it consciously. We try to be happy. We try, everything's great. When our energy inside though is not great, our kids, they don't have a rational mind yet until they're 7, 8 years old, and not until they're 12, 13, 14 does it become strong. They're just subconscious or unconscious mind is just absorbing. And when they sense your energy, that discordant, anxious energy, that's scary for them. And, you know, as adults, we know, hey, it's just the way it is, like life's tough, but your children don't. And that's where so many of the things that close in around us as adults have started to form. Was when we were children, we sensed energy that was scary to us, and we protected ourselves by drawing inward, not being as vibrant and dynamic and connected as we would have otherwise been, because that's the only thing our little baby mind knew how to do, to protect ourselves. Like our mind is always trying to protect us. And the strategies it uses to protect you when you're 2 years old, 3 years old, are not the best ones, but they will stay in your deeper mind for the rest of your life unless you know how to get rid of them. And they will be the very thing that stops us from connecting the way we want to connect. And so it's just so exciting to have discovered like how to work with this, because you then go back in your own childhood and realize the moments in which you can actually remember now, once you work through this, where you started to disconnect. And that makes it so hard for you to reconnect as a parent.
No, it's true. And then it's also, from my perspective, it's like, I know these things. I know the work because I've done a lot of work in therapy. I know, but how can I change those patterns when I'm actually facing a situation? That's where the learning and the growth is. And when I'm not my best self, I just forgive myself, and like constantly working and knowing that that's, you know, that's life.
Yeah. And we're excited to share with people that like that constant conscious way of working, it isn't as effective, and people are doing amazing things as best they can, but the mind doesn't work this way, it turns out. And the deeper mind is willing to fix these things very quickly, but we just don't have enough in our culture about how to do that. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting to know that you guys are out there and you're helping people in these ways, because I didn't know where I was struggling. And why I was struggling until I started learning, until I started like even being conscious of anxiety and pressures I was putting on myself that were ill-placed. So it's really important work, and I appreciate what you guys are doing so much. And I think I'm going to say that like 3 more times today. So bear with me. What are some bigger challenges that you see that parents are facing right now? And if, you know, I know that's a really broad question, but you guys do this work, so what do you guys think it is?
I mean, I definitely like there's a couple that I would throw out quickly. One is we're probably as we're in more and more of a tense environment, we're harder and harder on ourselves. And the more you learn, like you were talking about earlier, like the more you learn, the more you want to do for your kids. But so much of what needs to be done, and now we have a puppy here who came to say,
oh, you're so cute.
the more you want to do for your kids, the more you know, the harder you are on yourself. Right. And the harder you are on yourself, I work with a lot of, obviously, you know, I work with a bunch of professionals. So some of our clients come from people I work with, and all the people we work with are very intentional parents. Right. So they're their own worst enemies in that sense of like, the more you learn, the harder you are on yourself. And if what you learn isn't really easy to help you make the change, then it's almost like you become more critical. So I think that seems to be amplifying a lot right now, you know, as the parents are just getting more and more knowledgeable and then harder and harder on themselves, which is kind of a never ending cycle. Sucks.
And that's because all behavior is in the realm of the unconscious. So it has nothing to do with how hard you're trying or your willpower or how much you love your kids. It's just not about that. Not about that.
And, you know, besides the global pandemic and societal uproar and all of the
Yeah.
things and the politics. Besides those, they feel external, but they'll affect you.
Oh yeah,
And
they're just
social media
amplifying.
and all the things. So
It's all amplifying the
Totally.
sense of stress and urgency, right? Which just makes it harder to be the person we want to be. It's that, how do you create space for yourself when it feels like the world's closing in around you, right? And again, all these things are real, but our response to them, which many of us know is possible, but we don't know how to do it. Like, our response to that pressure is changeable. Like, you can quickly not care about the pandemic, believe it or not.
right.
If you want, you know, and you
If you
can.
wanted to, yes.
Totally, and not just want to, but it's totally possible. So I think that's important. The other thing that Jen, you'll probably want to talk about this because I know you care a lot about it, is the amount of because we're like hypnotherapists, like we know a lot about how the media uses what are effectively hypnosis techniques to influence us. And I think that both, like you mentioned, social media, the PhD psychologists have been working for years and years and years to figure out how to manipulate our minds, and the amount
And our
of
kids' minds.
and our kids' minds,
Yeah.
right? And the amount of that that's going on now is exponentially more than it was even 20 years ago. And so I think that that's a big, why don't you talk about your experience of that?
Yeah, well, your question was really about that, like the biggest challenges, right? So
Right.
I think that for parents, navigating that can be really tricky,
Yeah.
right? Because our kids want media,
Mhm.
but we're recognizing that there is messaging. We know deep down that it's having an impact.
Mhm.
And that's been a real struggle here at home for us, right? We're always in the question of like, okay, how do we balance this
Right.
with the world that we live in based on, this is new territory. So how do we navigate this? So and it comes down to being able to have that kind of relationship with my kids where I can be in conversation with them and be with what is important to them, to say, I understand what's important to you. I understand that you have, right now you're at an age, my daughter's in her she's a tween, and her social life is super important. And so she wants to be able to have those conversations about shows that I don't want her to watch. So I what do? I watch with her. I will talk with her about the potential influence. And so one of the things actually that we are teaching parents is how to be able to recognize the patterns that are going on so that they are able to teach their children about, oh, hey, this is a filter. This is a filter. This is a stereotype. This is not how a love life needs to be. This person is not they're giving their power away. This isn't a model for how to be. There's like a lot of different examples that, my kids are sick of me talking about this. They're like, I got it, Mom, but I'm still doing it.
But they did get it, actually. That's the exciting part, is like again, everything, it's like so many things we have to flip them 180 degrees. Like, our kids are totally capable of defending themselves, even when they're young, if they just know what to look for. Once you raise their awareness to how the mind works and what people are doing, they'll actually defend themselves. Like, what our daughter says is amazing sometimes, when she's like notices like a behavior on a television show.
Right.
And she's like, I like watching this, but this is not at all how I'm going to be or how I want to be. Like, these people this is crazy, this relationship. It's so fake. She still enjoys watching it, but she totally sees it for what it is.
Yeah.
And she's defending herself, and she's picking TV shows that aren't necessarily popular ones. She's watching the Golden Girls right now. Can you believe it?
So into the
Great show.
Loves it. And it's like, fantastic. And she says that she's like, this is a good show, this one not so much, right? Like, and sometimes I watch them just because my friends watch them, but I'm totally filtering out so much of what otherwise would have just gone in. And so teaching our kids how the mind really works and giving awareness allows them to start to defend themselves. It's not up to us to create a bubble around them. That's where I think a lot of parents are struggling, because, oh God, I want to draw a box around them so that they're safe, but I can't do that because then I'm isolating them, or maybe I do a lot of that and then they rebel against me. Instead, the secret is to teach them to take care of themselves and be their partner in teaching and taking care of themselves, rather than the enforcer of the boundaries around them. They are so capable, and their instincts are amazingly good, and we deny those instincts so often accidentally.
Yeah.
When we learn to acknowledge those instincts and build on them, the kids can do more than probably we can do as adults sometimes.
Yeah.
You guys must be very proud about how they interact with TV and media, because this is a lot of work. You've been doing a lot of work to give them their own autonomy and let them have opinions about other shows. So,
Yeah.
Awesome. You said something about hypnotherapy earlier, and I want to touch on that. How does that related to astrology? In my mind, those are two totally different worlds, and I'm curious to see how you guys use that in your work.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I was trained as a scientist. I've worked in technology for years. I was the last guy. I used to laugh at astrology. I thought it was so silly. And
now he's doing charts.
And now I'm a professional astrologer. But how it happened was we've studied a lot of really powerful ancient traditions, including things from ancient Egypt and ancient Hawaii. And what we started to notice was there was a lot of patterns that people have noticed. They've been studying themselves for 20,000 years, and it's like, and modern science just threw it all in the trash, but it's like, there's something there. And it was there that I learned about what astrology really is, which is it's really a very, very interesting way of mapping how energy is in the world through the lens of the planets. And those energies, if they impact us and they impact our lives, astrology has a perfect catalog of like how we develop as humans and how energies impact us. And so what we noticed that astrology is not about predicting the future. Like that's a party game, right? It's like what it really is about bringing people self-awareness. And that's super exciting. So if you can notice like how you are naturally is actually understood by your astrology can help you see that more clearly, it leads to a lot of self-acceptance. And so we use that a lot in coaching. Like just an example of a friend, who was like so down on herself because her mind is a mind that works in a very, very clear stepwise manner. We say that it's in the element of the earth. It's a Capricorn mind. Great. What does that really mean? It means that she thinks step by step, but she always gets great results. She just builds to them nice and slow. She was surrounded by people who are all air minds and which move very quickly, but don't sometimes just disappear and get lost and don't ever get anything done, but they move really fast. And her life taught her that she was stupid and because that was smart. The air mind was smart, but it isn't true. They're just different ways of functioning. And astrology just makes this so clear for us about how we are naturally is not a problem. It's a strength to be built on. And so when you can look at somebody and say, what are you challenged with in your life? Look at the astrology and say, these are the natural energies that flow through you. Do you recognize that? And they say, oh, I've been misunderstanding that. I've been putting myself down instead of realizing what they could be building on. It's such an amazing tool.
Yeah. And as being able to to see that, look through that lens about your child, right? Because we really believe that, people come in, children come through us, right? Not to us. And they are their own entities. So being able to see who is this person, right? To separate myself, what is the unlived life that I want, instead of projecting that onto my kids, to be able to see who is this person really? And what are their strengths? What is likely to be something they're going to need a little support navigating? And then how can I show up with who I am to help them? Is a really exciting lens. It's an amazing tool to have available, and it's so easy. You have instant knowledge. It's like miraculous.
Okay, I have so many questions. First, I have met so many people, and I'm such an amateur, but I've met so many people that feel like they're in a different moon sign.
Uh-huh.
Does that make any sense? And so when you're looking at somebody who's like naturally a Capricorn and they're giving you a different birthday and month, do you automatically say, oh, I've read that wrong? Or is it how much of it is based on your birthday and that date? And
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is why astrology not being done, if you will, with correctly, but just looking through that narrow lens.
Yeah.
When we say I'm a Capricorn, that's our sun sign. You just mentioned, well, the sun is in a sign, but the moon's in a sign. Every planet is in a sign. And the moon has an important influence on us. The sun is a different influence. The place where the sun was rising over the horizon at the time of your birth actually has a very powerful influence on how the world sees us and how we see the world. If you don't look at all these factors, then it's real easy for you to think that the thing that someone told you about your sun sign isn't right. But when you look at all the factors, sometimes there's other energies in your chart that are more powerful than your sun. And therefore, that's not the place to focus. Charts tend to have themes. Like your life has a set of energies that are interacting, and some of them are discordant with each other. And even more amazingly, you can use astrology and ancient meditation techniques to actually align energies in your mind and body, which is really cool stuff, but obviously a little bit advanced. So yeah, when someone comes and says, I don't feel like this thing that I've been told, the answer is, I haven't found a chart yet that isn't extremely correct when it's understood fully. Yeah, if you look through the lens of the newspaper said that you're a Sagittarius and today Sagittarius are going to feel a certain way, yeah, that'll be wrong most of the time, or most of the time.
I love this because it feels a lot like when you take a personality test, Myers-Briggs or any of the other totally supported scientific personality tests. You go in and you're answering these questions that are, you know, sometimes worded exactly like the previous questions, but you're answering them differently because of the previous, you know, it's
Absolutely.
a tool.
It's
It's
so
a
cool.
tool
Yeah.
that you use to like process your traumas and your successes and your life, right? So I appreciate that, but I do want to go back to hypnotherapy. What is it? How do you use it in your work? How would a new and expecting mom think of hypnotherapy in their life, I guess?
Yeah. Well, we talked earlier about how these beliefs, right? All behaviors are driven by our emotional states. Our emotional states and our thought patterns and our beliefs, all of those are all living in the realm of the unconscious mind. So it's like basically when you're in the age of 0 to 3, all these new decisions get made. And from those decisions, all these different beliefs and strategies get built on this decision, emotional responses, and then our behaviors. And when we have, you know, a completely different context, and now with our adult brain, with all of our knowledge and everything, we need to update this decision-making process, this understanding of the world. And unfortunately, the way that we're parented largely, the way that we are, you know, the way our whole society is structured culturally, socially, and in our families, we're taught not to work with our unconscious mind very well. And so we have to relearn that. So hypnosis is not actually how we would call it's a tool, it's a piece of what we do. So we call them hypnotic techniques because our goal is really to bring the conscious and the unconscious mind back together to collaborate effectively. Most people's unconscious minds, like, for example, don't cry. Good, yeah, like, don't cry, stop crying, don't make a scene. Share when you're developmentally too young to be able to do that and understand what that even means. You know, like we're taught to disconnect from what is actually our truth, which is living in our unconscious mind. So conscious and unconscious get divided. What we do is we bring them back together. So when we work with people, we're working with their unconscious mind, but we're teaching them how to do it for themselves. And they remember everything. So we put them in a very light trance, which is basically like, just close your eyes. That's it. We don't do a big induction or anything like that. Did that answer your question?
Interesting. Yes, it's so interesting. And for a new and expecting mom that's struggling with like all of the newness, you know, I would definitely keep your number on hand and look up Mercury Coach.
One thing
everything you guys gave us today is super, super interesting and impactful. So
I just want to say one thing, Olivia, for new and expecting moms, I think one thing we haven't said that's super important is a lot of like anxiety and stress, which we're all having at some level, right? It's really, you know, I think we all know, and there's plenty of even scientific studies that this stuff has real impacts on, you know, kind of birth outcomes and even on cognitive development of kids in the future. And so I think the techniques that we use, which are hypnosis plus, because they're not just hypnosis, you wouldn't necessarily get the same thing from any hypnotherapist that we do because we've combined a lot of techniques, but being able to shed that anxiety and that stress really is not only going to give a better kind of birth and early parenting experience, but it actually makes a real difference for the kids and how they can develop. So I think that really taking that seriously of like letting go of a lot of the stress and anxiety is really going to be super valuable for having a better birth experience, and and having your kids have more like just a bigger field to play in, a bigger space to grow in, than they might have had otherwise. Because the mother's internal stresses really do seem to impact the child's ability to develop cognitively later.
Yeah, I mean, so many moms also are like, we all know, like, we have to purify our bodies, right? Our physical bodies. We're cleaning the house, we're preparing all this space. We put all of this effort into the environment, but our emotional bodies, our mental bodies, these are as important. And I would say, I'm biased, of course, more important in many ways.
More so for me, I think.
Yeah, because what happens in the physical is often connected or coming out of what's going on emotionally. And so having an emotional, like a cleanse, I call it an emotional cleanse, being able to cleanse, to release trauma even before you have a child. This is what we want people to be able to do.
Yeah, I love that. I'm just going to give you one little quick story. I ate my placenta the first baby, thinking that this was going to like bring and it was just nasty. And I had like the worst experience. And I just thought, we're doing so many things. I was doing so many things to try to like get back any sense of self and all the things. And what helped was talking to a professional. So and doing it consistently. That's what helped. That's what brought me back to myself. And obviously like a diet and a regular workout routine and all the things that we do for endorphins, but definitely talking to a professional, someone who could look at a bigger picture and who would let me come in with my own time and space. So thank you again for being here today, for speaking to new and expecting moms, for giving us the 3 tips: reparenting, happiness in your own life when we're parenting, and noting our own energies in front of our kids. So there's 3 really big tips, but also the other information about hypnotherapy and hypnotic techniques. There you go. It's all new information for me. So definitely going to be spending some time on your website, mercurycoach.com.
It's Mercury.
Right? Okay.
It's
Mercury.coach.
Mercury.coach.
Mercury.coach. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you guys again. And thank you for listening to San Francisco Bay Area Moms Bloom Event Expert Panel. We will be sharing more information from you guys on our socials. So please follow us on our socials, San Francisco Bay Area Moms, or SFBAM. Please Google us, and we'll see you guys at the Bloom Event. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, all.
Bye.